A lot of people mistake urgent for important or important for urgent, especially when it comes to clients or prospects.
Hello, welcome to episode 231 of the Smart Agents Podcast. As always, my name is Michael Walter, and I'll be your host. On today's episode, we are joined by Kay Phillips, business coach and consultant. Driven to help solo entrepreneurs build the businesses of their dreams, Kay's coaching focuses on three key pillars: productivity hacks, authentic networking strategies that feel meaningful instead of transactional, and communication skills that turn sales conversations into genuine connections. Throughout our conversation, Kay shares actionable tips and examples to help real estate professionals stay focused on the tasks that drive their businesses, take initial sales conversations to the next step, and how to connect better with clients as an introvert. But before we get on with today's featured interview, if you or someone else on your team has an incredible story of real estate success or tips to share with our community, send us a message to feedback@smartagents.com. We're always on the lookout for new guests to inspire our listeners. And lastly, if you enjoyed this conversation and want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents Podcast. We stream on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube. All right, let's get on with our conversation with Kay Phillips. If you're interested in learning more or connecting with Kay, I've included several links in the episode description. All right, well, really the way I like to start everything out is if you could just introduce yourself to us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background and where you are joining us from.
Yeah, I am joining you from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And that is where I was born and raised, kind of in the suburban area outside of Denver. But I started my business about 7 years ago, actually in a slightly different field. I scaled that up alongside my corporate business, or corporate job, I should say. And it was doing bookkeeping and fractional HR for clients as a side hustle, and found that people started asking me, hey, I want to do that too. Can you help me? So I started mentoring people and became a business coach a little bit on accident, but it is way more fun than books and keeping up with all of the ever-changing HR laws. So it really blossomed into the business coaching, helping small business owners, solopreneurs. And along the way, I discovered there's this whole group of people that don't always consider themselves solopreneurs or small business owners, but could use all the same help. And those are people who are like the financial planners, the real estate, people who are responsible for their own income essentially, and they work mostly off commission. It's just kind of a different way of thinking of a small business owner. And that's who I've really come to find need a lot of guidance and support, because it does get really lonely being out there by yourself, like as a real estate agent, because you're kind of in it on your own, maybe a little bit of brokerage support, but your friends and family all of a sudden don't quite understand why you're working these weird hours when you work for yourself.
Right, definitely. And obviously, our audience base is the real estate agents and the brokers. And, so many people get into this industry from, corporate jobs or from 9-to-5 jobs and, looking for that, financial and time freedom, and quickly find themselves, working much longer hours than they would have, in that 9-to-5. So what are some of those things that you have seen with, the real estate agents in particular that, could definitely benefit from your help?
Yeah. A lot of times I like to say kind of the first year when you get into business for yourself, you end up working twice the hours for half the pay and all the stress. And it doesn't have to be that way. There's definitely a hustle aspect to it, especially in the early days when you're learning. Like, it is chaos the first year. And then the second year rolls around, you think you kind of have it figured out, but your transactions still aren't where you thought they would be. And it can come down to just being busy rather than focusing on things that actually move the needles. One of my real estate clients, he's been a realtor for 7 years when we started working together, and he was still not quite thinking of himself as like an experienced realtor, because everyone around him had decades of experience. And, a lot more than somebody in their first year or two, especially when you're at year 7. And a lot of people drop out and find it too difficult in the first year or two, which is something I really am hoping to change by helping people focus on what those needle movers are, which a lot of times ends up being, open houses or doing the kind of cold or warm calls to people that you've met or connected with, or the lead gens, but actually making those calls and then having the skills, the soft communication skills to turn those cold to lukewarm calls into like, you know what? Yeah, we actually want a house this year, or yeah, we actually want to sell our house this year, is a whole nother skill entirely that I've found most people don't really ever learn when they're going through getting their real estate license.
Right. Absolutely. And, first off, I guess, before we kind of dive into some of those selling skills, talk to me about, at the time of recording this, we're, at the beginning of 2025. And, obviously, hopefully most agents have kind of put their business plan and goals together, at the end of last quarter, but it's still fresh on the mind. Talk to me a little bit about, some of that goal setting and things that people can do to stay on top of things so that they don't get so bogged down in the weeds.
Yeah, it's about systems, is what I've come to find. And we will always fall to the level of our systems. That thing you do on repeat, on autopilot, like brushing your teeth. It's something you do, 99% of the time, no matter how tired or stressed you are. And being able to develop that in your business as well is huge, because your motivation and your energy is going to be up and down all over the place with life events, seasons. If you're a female, it just happens every month because you're lucky like that. So knowing what your systems are, the minimum things that you need to do each day, maybe 2 to 3 things, no matter what, you will do these and it will move your business forward. I like to use the Eisenhower matrix for a lot of people when they start setting goals and feel like they're busy all the time, but aren't actually making the money they want to make. And for anyone who hasn't heard of the Eisenhower matrix, sometimes it's called like priority matrix. It's basically a quadrant that defines your time frame and your kind of priority level. So important, not important, urgent, not urgent. And those 4 squares make up kind of every task should fall into one of those. The first quadrant would be, this is important and it has to get done right now. There is a very legitimate consequence and deadline coming up. Second square would be, this needs to get done. I'm going to schedule it. So you actually block that time out on your calendar. The third square would be, I'm going to delegate this or find a way to outsource it, or I'm going to have AI help me with it. Something like that. It doesn't necessarily need your unique you-ness in order to be completed. And then the fourth box, I like to call, it's called delete in the matrix because it's not important. I like to call it delay. I have a lot of ideas that pop up, like a lot of business owners, because you don't get into business for yourself if you're not kind of created and like, ooh, shiny, look at that new project. And I like to call that my delay box. So I'll keep myself focused and not get distracted with all the other ideas. Like, let's start a newsletter. Ooh, I want to get more heavy on social media, which if I need transactions, doing a newsletter or social media is not going to get me any more transactions in the near future. That is very much a long game. So I'll put those ideas in that delay box, set a reminder on my calendar, and come back to them, in a week, a month. I usually have a couple days each month set up for just kind of admin, tidying up, looking at that delay box. If I haven't been able to stop thinking about that idea, then I'll schedule it in. So it moves up to the second box. And if I have no idea what my notes mean, nothing makes any sense, then I do actually delete it. It was just a shiny object. And that helps keep me on track and keep me actually working towards my goals and not getting distracted with the next kind of, shiny, fun thing, something new, the dopamine hit of starting a new way to try to get those transactions.
Right. So, when somebody's adding those tasks to those, different quadrants, I have to imagine a lot of people, they probably overfill that, has to get done. It is an importance. So what are some of your tips or techniques to kind of really determine if that task is a absolute 100 priority that it gets done now?
Yeah, a lot of people do. A lot of people mistake urgent for important or important for urgent, especially when it comes to clients or prospects. You drop everything and they all of a sudden go into that box. When a lot of times, they're kind of tire kickers. You've been working with them for 3 months. It's not actually urgent. They just make it seem like it. For me, I take a slightly maybe morbid approach to that box. And I look at that as every day when I'm kind of prioritizing my tasks, if, I get a call, heaven forbid, somebody's in the hospital or something crazy happens, the internet of the world goes down. If that happens, what can I do first thing to get done to move my business forward, assuming I'm not going to be working the rest of the day or the rest of the week potentially? Like, what are those most critical things? Or I had a situation with my grandma a couple of years ago running my bookkeeping and HR fractional business, plus the business coaching full time, plus still working for my corporate job. And she fell, broke her shoulder. And I ended up essentially almost moving in with her for about a month as she recovered and spent the first week in the hospital with her. So I was only doing the absolute bare minimum, the absolutely have to get done. Otherwise, my business will not be here when I'm done taking care of her. And that's kind of how I look at that quadrant is, what do I have to get done no matter what? And a lot of times when you bring it down to, this is what I need to do, end of story, you cut out a lot of the busy work. So you're no longer working, twice the hours. You're only maybe working 4 hours, which feels weird to how we've been conditioned, especially in Western society.
And then I guess, from there, it moves on to actually, building those systems so that you are completing, those tasks within, those must do's. And then, so then, kind of how does that transition into making sure that you are blocking out the time and putting those, I guess the systems and the reminders in place that you are taking care of those tasks?
It depends on the person. For me, it's all about the morning routine. So I have, no matter what time I wake up, I have a set routine that I go through. Wake up, feed the dogs, work out, read, get my breakfast, sit down at my computer, do my creative work, then do my admin work, and then meetings start at 10. That's kind of my basic morning flow. And I am fairly religious about that. No matter what time I wake up, no matter what day, this is what we're doing. And knowing that I can get the most work done in the mornings, that works for me. Some people, they got kids, it's chaos. So they need to maybe bump it back a little bit. And they maybe need after lunch is kind of the quiet time before everybody gets home, but they've gotten everything, personally done that they need to. So it's a matter of finding what works for you and building very small habits at a time that lead to a routine. If you try to change everything at once, we all know how that goes. Every January, it doesn't usually work. I think January 10th is the unofficial quit your resolution day, right, for most people. So it's really figuring out what works for you and just doing little tweaks. Take what you're already doing, your current routine, and just change one thing. Maybe that's adding, 10 minutes of reading, like a business book or personal development book, because that is 100% actually work. Doing your workout, that actually benefits you in your job. It all really works together in a very abstract way. And I didn't believe it until I started doing it. And now I notice a definite dip in my numbers whenever I don't stick to that morning routine. But it's really kind of building it, like I said, that brick by brick, layer by layer, what works, what doesn't. And when you're actually doing the tasks throughout the day, what is working? What is your close or conversion rate? Tracking your numbers sucks, admittedly. I don't like it, but it really, really works. And you can see really quickly what are the things that are getting me my results. And if you're doing a bunch of things that aren't getting you results just because you think they should, or there's a lot of shoulds thrown around, everyone on YouTube is telling you this is how you get clients, and it's not working for you, but something else is, then drop the shoulds and just focus on that. but you'll never really see what's working unless you track it.
Before we dive into our next topic, I have a question. Agents, are you ready to build instant trust with the sellers and buyers you meet? Well, with today's sponsor, Authorify, you can become a published author and gain instant credibility with potential clients. You'll easily win listings and buyers will want you to represent them as their agent. Imagine handing somebody your book instead of a business card and watching them realize that you're the real deal and want to list with you. Even better, you can try this out for free because Authorify is giving you a free sample book so you can see exactly how it works. Simply go to authorify.com/sample to claim your free sample book now. One of the topics that I'd love to talk to you about, I know for a lot of agents out there, they get into the real estate business and, maybe they're not the most outgoing person. Maybe they're a little bit more, introverted, or they don't like, the social media world. It's not all about them. They don't like having that spotlight on them. What are some of those things that, those folks, the more introverted, salespeople can do to connect with clients, whether they are those cold leads or, warmer people that you've met along the way?
Yeah, that is such a great topic because contrary to popular belief, I am so introverted. I will spend weeks before my business. I will not talk to a soul other than, my cats, my dogs, and all the critters I have running around. I am very happy to never leave the house and talk to people. But I also get most of my business through networking. So I had to learn how to speak and kind of like turn on a little bit more of the extrovert energy. And for me, a huge piece of that was mindset and knowing that selling is serving, and to sell and serve through curiosity. So it's a bit of a fine line, which I definitely messed up early on. It's asking a lot of genuine questions and making them questions that really mean something to the other person, but also lead them to the realization you need them to make. So it's not manipulation. It's almost coaching in a way, or like very like soft therapy. Like, where they need to get, but they don't know yet. So you can't skip kind of that exploration diagnostic phase. And that's really hard for me because I know what they need. I know I can help them, but I have to help them realize it first. And a lot of that is through the curiosity. Like, instead of what do you do if I'm in a room full of people, asking maybe a slightly better question, especially, first month or two of the year. What are you working on this year that's exciting? And through that, they're going to tell you everything you need to know. And you can, that's really interesting. How is that supporting, your business goals? And just keep walking them kind of down that path. And, what do you feel like you need, or what's the big challenge here? What do you think would be better? If you had a bigger house, do you think you could get more business if you did like some business parties for collaborators? There's a lot of different genuine questions you can ask in the moment that help them see, oh yeah, maybe I do need to move up my timeline. I could do it now. I just don't want to, move, because we all know moving is a hassle.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, so many people, especially when it comes to the cold leads, maybe somebody that has filled out, some kind of a lead capture page, on your website, or you've gotten leads through maybe a ad campaign that you're running. If you're not like the most super outgoing person, having those leading questions is really great. If somebody's looking at, listings that you have, well, what is it about your house now that you're looking to upgrade from, or what is it about your current house that you love that you would like to find in your next place? So those are great things to, learn bits about, your potential clients, and like really kind of start building those good connections to where, you can always fall back on those things that they've relayed to you.
Yep, exactly. And it helps them realize too, like to say like, they say, my home office kind of sucks. And obviously I work from home. So I need a home office that works for me. Once they say it out loud, every time they step into their office or think about their home office, they're going to be thinking about, oh, I need a better office. And it's just kind of a really subtle thing. It might take them a minute, especially for a big purchase, obviously, like a house. It's a big thing to sell, it's a big thing to buy, but they'll think about it much more often. We get used to things we don't necessarily like. Comfort zones are kind of tricky like that. Even if it's not the best for us, even if we don't like it, it's familiar. So therefore, it's more comfortable than the unfamiliar, which is something new. That's just kind of evolutionarily how we've developed. So helping people realize, like, no, you really don't like that, remember? And with like the cold form or the cold calls or lead forms, things like that, or maybe somebody who just like signed in at an open house, but you never actually talked to, those are really good times to have kind of like a framework. I don't usually suggest a script so much, but kind of do a framework. And then if you're really new, yes, let's do a script, because it helps you say it out loud several times. And then you're like, oh yeah, no, the script sounds too scripty. So it's more of a framework. Like, here's my opening. Hey, I'm calling you because you filled out this form. I'd love to hear what you're looking for in a new house, or maybe what you don't like about your current house. And leave it something open-ended, but also like, hey, I'm calling because you told me to call you, essentially, and kind of remind them that they did that. And that can take a little while because they maybe, filled out several. If they're actually serious about looking for a house, they probably got 10 realtors calling them. But calling them and saying something, even a voicemail, in a way that gets across, I'm not pushy, I'm not salesy, I'm curious about you and why you filled this out in the first place. Obviously, you're thinking about buying or selling. Why is what I want to get to. And people will more often sign with the people they feel connected to, that they feel understand them. And once you actually get them on the phone, or if you're lucky enough, they actually answer, being able to kind of like repeat and affirm what they say when they answer a question. Like, oh, it sounds like working from your home office kind of sucks right now. What would you love in your ideal office? And really paint that picture and get them to paint it, because then it starts to become a little familiar because they're envisioning it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like, by asking those kind of exploratory questions, you really are avoiding coming across as that, like that used car salesman type thing that so many, like there's just that stigma around it. Like we all know it. And it's, one of those things that everybody's trying to avoid. But if you are able to ask those questions to gain that information to then be able to bring back, later on in that conversation, or help them kind of guide the direction of their home purchase or sale, I definitely think that's the way to go, because you are going to build those more genuine connections with people.
Exactly. And it is a definite balance. I mentioned earlier, I struggled with this early on. It's the curiosity. Asking questions is awesome, but it can also feel a little bit like an interrogation at some point. So doing kind of like the reflect and affirm, like, oh, say their thing back. It sucks working in your home office now because of XYZ, and how would you like your ideal one to look? Oh, you'd like your ideal one to have more of this and less of that. So it's repeating and asking questions without being, what did you do? Are you going to buy or not? You don't want to put people under that spotlight, like the 70s sales guy, or like a lot of times in networking events, you see, I call it like the bro sales strategy, where it's just a polished version of that 70s salesman.
Right.
And it really helps to do, reflect back to them a little bit and then ask a question, and not be afraid to answer their questions too. I've seen some realtors like, oh no, I have to be curious, only curious. And it's like, you can talk about yourself. If you got your house most recently, or you helped somebody the other day, like, yeah, I had a client who was looking for a better home office because they're a, hardcore gamer streamer person. And we found them this awesome basement. It was unfinished, but there was a vision for it, and they made it exactly what they wanted. That's one of the things I love about being in this industry, is I actually get to help people build their dream studio or office. So you can talk about yourself and answer questions. You just want to keep it, kind of like that 80-20, like 80% is you being curious about them. And people will start to feel weird if you ask too many questions, just rapid fire. So throwing in a few of those extras can be really helpful, especially for introverts, just to go out and ask the questions, but also not feel like they're interrogating somebody.
Right. And then, so from that part in the conversation, I mean, obviously at some point you have to get to the next step. We have to close that conversation. Not necessarily the sale, but we have to put some kind of, okay, we've talked on the phone. Now we need to set a time to meet in person or set up some kind of a listing agreement. And I know, if you're doing that kind of back and forth exploratory song and dance, the person on the other side, the buyer can also be thinking like, gosh, when's this guy, when's this person, when are they going to just ask me the question? When are we going to meet? And kind of leaving things up in the air can be really detrimental to closing that, whether getting that listing appointment. So what are some of your tips for actually setting some of those, not necessarily deadlines, but setting an appointment?
Yeah, that is very much a problem with actually closing the call or setting up what happens next. And that can be as simple as a really good cue that they want you to move the conversation forward is they might ask you a question about a next step. Like, okay, so what do I do from here? And that's your cue. Like, okay, they're kind of asking for the close. Maybe not the sale close, but at least the conversation close. And go, based on everything you told me today about X, Y, and Z, let's set up a time to meet in person, or let's plan next weekend to go look at 5 homes on Saturday. Does 10 o'clock work for you for a starting time? So it's a little bit of an assumptive close. It's a little bit of just leadership, essentially, at that point. If they don't say anything like that, which is kind of 50-50, depending on, kind of their own confidence, they might be waiting entirely on you as the realtor to lead that conversation. And so knowing, all right, I've asked them the questions, I'm getting a vibe, or an energy kind of from their tone that they're about done, they need to get back to their day. You can wrap up. It's something real simple like, all right, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you weren't expecting my call. I'm not trying to keep you here all day. So how about we set up a time, to meet and look at this house, or I'm going to send you over, 3 or 4 different places just to get you started. Something like that. Give them a next step in a little bit of an assumption, assuming that they want this next step, even if they haven't explicitly said it. If they're still on the phone with you, they are interested. And it can be the fear of rejection that stops people at that point. Conversation's great till then. So one of the exercises I have all of my realtors or even mortgage lenders do is go for no. I want you to call until you get 20 people to tell you to stick it where the sun don't shine. Or no, thanks, not right now, lose my number, whatever the case may be. And that is huge. I've had, I think, only one person ever actually get to 20 no's, because I did this exercise with a realtor last year, and I think he was at call 10 or 12, and he called me and he said, hey, I know this is my exercise for the week, but I have to stop. I have 3 transactions. I literally cannot handle more transactions right now. So I have to stop calling people. Like, okay, that's cool. Okay, next week you're going to call, 20 people and get 20 no's again. So you keep your pipeline full. And that's, it's not just a when you need transactions. It's getting used to hearing no, but it's also a way to keep your pipeline full. Because as you know, real estate transactions, it's anywhere 3 weeks if it's just super speedy. When I bought my first house, it was about 3 months. So it can go for a really long time, and you need to be constantly filling that pipeline because there is a bit of a lag between signing and closing.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, all those, I love that exercise of calling until you get those 20 no's. Cause I mean, as long as if you're asking those questions and if you're getting people on the phone and you're asking those exploratory questions, people aren't going to, hang up the phone all that quickly. At least they will start to answer. And if you are engaged in the conversation, they will definitely stay on longer with you. One of the next things I want to ask you, especially, for those introverts, I myself, big introvert, my first part of my career was always like behind the camera. I just kind of fell into doing this. And so it's been a little weird, but I'm not the biggest like social media person. Don't like seeing my face on social media. And in real estate, that's kind of, that's one of those things like people look up, the Instagram pages or the Facebook pages. So what are some of those things that, the agents can help, get their personality out there a little bit so that, maybe those cold leads are searching them. But if they're just not the biggest, hey, look at me on social media.
That is definitely tricky. I don't believe you have to have social media, but it is getting to be more important and more common. People used to go to websites a lot. They used to use Google a lot. Now they're using social media and ChatGPT instead of Google. So it is definitely an aspect of it. Showing your face that you're a real person is definitely helpful. It can be storytelling or, just going on and following a bunch of realtors, or if not following them, at least going and seeing what they're doing. And even people in kind of adjacent niches. So you can bring stories that way, or like when you're setting up an open house, doing like a fun little video. I've seen some realtors, it's kind of funny. They do like speed tours and they're literally just booking it in and out of each room. Like, look at the master as they like slide on the carpet, look at the master bath. And then they pause for like something that's really like nice. And then they book it again. So you're not really like sitting there talking to the camera. Your face isn't there. You're not having to figure out what to say. You're just doing a tour in like 5 minutes. And a lot of people really resonate with that kind of content, or even like the building inspectors, like these, the hurricane straps aren't actually like bolted to anything. They're just like hanging out there. This is why you do inspections. And little things like that, like, hey, I just had a client have this problem. And if you're looking to buy a house, I don't want you to have this problem too. It was with the title agency, blah, 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 blah. And go into like, oh, hey, like, bestie, let me give you a hot tip. And it can be simple. It can be you walking the dog just as B-roll and doing a voiceover. You don't always have to show your face. It can be whatever you want. But the more engaging it is, the more personal it is, and especially depending on the platform. If you're on Instagram and TikTok, it's going to look different than if you're on LinkedIn. If you do one of those like speedy tours on LinkedIn, you're probably not going to get the attraction or the people messaging you that you want. But like on Instagram and TikTok, that's great. If you want to sit down and do more of like a talking head video, that might be a little more appropriate for LinkedIn. But if you don't have some extra like jazz or personality, it might not work so well on TikTok or Instagram. One thing I've seen, I think a lot of realtors, because a lot of people really love coffee. One of my favorite like visual hooks is it's honestly anxiety inducing. They have a coffee cup that's like super full and they move it around and the coffee's almost always splashing out. So they watch the video and by default also hear what you're saying as well. So that can be something really captivating, but also really small just to hook people's attention in. And on those videos, I am not looking at the person who's talking. I'm listening to them, but I am watching that coffee cup because they're like sitting in their car. They have on like a white dress or something. And I'm just terrified for them. And that can be a good way to show your face, but know that nobody's actually like focusing on your face.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if you're providing the value in your content and like, really, the stuff that you're doing is, something that, one of your buyers or sellers, if you were sitting across the table talking to them about, I think that's, a really great way to, to think about content creation. You know, you're not necessarily making this for the masses. You're talking to one person. It's a one person conversation that you're having with, because at that moment it's the one person that's across that screen, you know, from you. And I think that's definitely another good way to think about things if you are nervous about putting yourself out there on social media.
Yeah. And just doing it. That is the hardest part. It's like the 20 no's. Same thing for people who want to do more on social media, because everyone, you know, thinks they should do more on social media. And when they're uncomfortable about it, or like I have one realtor who wants to be on social media, is just amazing, like with graphic designs, videos are super cinematic. It's amazing. And one of those issues he has with social media, is, you know, his face and his voice. He doesn't like seeing and hearing them. No one says you have to go back and watch your own videos, though. You can get somebody to edit them for you if you want. And he also has a fear of rejection. And so they just keep putting content out there. And he put something out about one of the new rules last, I think it was maybe August, with like the
buyer agreements.
Yeah, he put something out there, and he pulled it directly from, you know, like the official website. But he just talked it. He didn't link his source or anything in his comments, which it's Instagram. You don't need to link your sources. This is not college. And another realtor was on there, and she popped into his comments like, "Hey, you're wrong." And that was just, oh my gosh, he had such an issue with it. He just felt so bad and just questioned himself so deeply and immediately. I'm like, okay, you sourced this. Like, you literally like read it almost verbatim. Mm-hmm. She's wrong, not you. And you can, you know, you can hide the comment, you can block her if you want, or you can reply and say, like, I'd love to, you know, hear why you think I'm wrong. Here's where I got my information from. Where did you get yours? Again, curiosity. Curiosity solves so many problems. And being open to hearing like, oh crap, maybe I am actually wrong. Even though, you know, obviously he got it from the official website. It wasn't wrong. She was just lagging behind and not up to date. And it, you know, it was a big deal. It definitely rocked the realtor community. So it was a big issue for him to come through with that confidence, and then to be like, oh no, I am right, and stand on it, even though somebody else is telling him is wrong. And one of the things you're going to find when you start doing videos, cold calls, networking meetings, you start doing anything, the first probably like 10, 15 really suck. Like, you kind of think you got it, and then you walk away, or you're done talking and you're just like, I don't even know what I said. I think I blacked out. And you know it was terrible, or everyone gives you a weird look. And that happens. The good news is, when you're starting on social media, no one's looking. When you're starting on YouTube, no one's looking. Like, the videos might look terrible. You're learning. That's totally cool. Until you get about 50 to 100 videos in, no one's really paying attention. You may have one that goes viral. It very rarely happens when you're that new, but it can happen. And in that case, awesome. You just found a formula that works. Rinse and repeat. You know, there's people that do the same hook every single time, and it works for them. It's not a problem. You don't have to change anything if you found something that works. It feels repetitive for you, but it's not for the audience that's actually scrolling. So it's really just like the 20 no's. Go out, post 20 videos, do one 90-second reel a day. Whatever thing you want to do it every single day, and you're going to get so good so fast just by doing it. Even if you have no idea what you're doing, you don't need to buy a course. You can just do it and figure it out as you go. Because honestly, that's all any of us are doing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, for anybody listening to this, where can they find more about, you know, your coaching program? And then do you work with, do you work with agents, or if somebody did want to work with you, how does that work? How can somebody get connected with you?
Yeah, I'll give you a link, and that will go to what's essentially like a link tree. So they can find some more information, some freebies, some webinars that I've done in the past. And there's also an option on there if they are interested in one-on-one or group coaching. They can fill out a form, and then we can sit down, chat about it, make sure it's the right fit for them, and they're in the place that they can actually benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely put that on there. And then where do you have a social media handle or anything like that people can follow as well?
I do. I'm on most of the socials. Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn are the main ones for me. And my handle on all three is just the Kay Phillips.
Nice and easy.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time, and we will definitely be putting that link tree in the episode description for anybody to check out those, that content from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I really want to thank Kay for joining us today and sharing her tips for prioritizing the needle-moving activities and connecting more effectively with potential clients. Remember, if you would like to learn more from Kay or connect with her, be sure to check out the episode description for all of her links. So once again, if you think you or someone else on your team has an incredible story or real estate tips to share with our community, send us a message to feedback@smartagents.com. Well, that wraps things up for this episode, but remember, follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Again, I'm Michael Walter, and we'll see you on the next episode.